Today I'm going to be covering the different MMA archetypes. Everybody has a different build, everybody's body is different. People have fast twitch muscle fibers, they have slow twitch muscle fibers. Some people have better cardio, some people are very explosive, have the touch of death. And that's what I'm going to be talking about, is the different archetypes we see in MMA today. UFC fighters, I'm going to categorize them into specific archetypes. And keep in mind, every fighter is different and there's subcategories of archetypes, right? But I'm going to start with pressure fighter. And the three fighters I have are Khabib, Sean Strickland, and Merab Dvalishvili. These guys are way different fighters though, and they have their own categories below just pressure fighter. But I'm going to start with Khabib. And Khabib is a pressure grappler. We know how he fights. He just drowns his opponent with pressure. The Justin Gaethje fight is the perfect example if you want to understand more about what I'm talking about. Khabib just went forward, he took him down, and he exhausted Gaethje within 2 rounds. That's how good Khabib is at pressure grappling. And he does it so well that he gets a finish out of it. But Sean Strickland, he's still a pressure fighter, but he's more of a pressure striker. Okay, he's not the Max Holloway level volume output, but it's more so him just walking forward and it being extremely defensive, where he can get away with walking forward because you cannot land a damaging strike on Strickland. Everything, he rolls off of it, he leans back, he's pairing with his hands. He's exhausting you by making you walk backwards, and he's defending all of your shots. He's almost like a punching bag, but he's not taking damage from the shots. We saw that with Adesanya. Adesanya just couldn't land a damaging shot on Sean Strickland, and he exhausted Adesanya. He smothered him with pressure, and he won that fight convincingly. And then we have Merab, who's actually pretty similar to Khabib, but he's not as imposing, and he doesn't get finishes. But he's still, the way he wins is through pressure, through grappling. The only difference between him and Khabib is Khabib was much better at it. That's the only thing, the difference I see between these guys. They're both pressure grapplers, but Khabib will take you down easier and he will smother you better and do more damage to you. Whereas Merab, he'll shoot a takedown, he'll either get it or not, and then he'll just try again. He just shoots takedown, shoots takedown, shoots takedown, and before you know it, the fight's over. Honestly, I think pressure fighter is one of the worst fighters, one of the scariest people to get in a fight with, because, one of the biggest fears of getting into a fight is getting exhausted. That's why we see a lot of these guys who are like boring fighters. A lot of them aren't just gonna be absolute savages and just exhaust themselves in 1 round like Michael Chandler. Just throw it all out there, because if you don't get the finish, then you're fucking done for in the next rounds. Some people actually care about, not getting exhausted and finished in the later rounds. But on to KO artists. The 3 fighters I selected that are the KO artist archetype is Ilia Topuria, Alex Pereira, and Sean O'Malley. So starting with Ilia Topuria, there's not many sub-archetypes of KO artists. I would say there's 2, and one of them is what Ilia Topuria is. And he's the KO artist who, is technical. It's hit and not get hit. He is one of the best boxing I've ever seen in the UFC. I think he's the best boxer in the UFC that I've ever seen. You can debate me on that in the comments. He finds that perfect shot and he goes for it, and that's the way he wins, right? KO artists, they're actively looking for the KO shot to win the fight. That's their way of winning. That's their preferred way to win the fight. And Ilia Topuria is that sniper, right? He's the sniper KO artist. He's looking for the perfect shot. He's slipping your shot and then he's going to counter you, like Conor McGregor and like Sean O'Malley. Pereira's a little bit different. Pereira's he's extremely technical, but he's more of a I'll trade with you, right? Ngannou is even more of a version where he's a KO artist. That's what he does. He looks for the KO, but he's not technical about it. He'll meet you, he'll throw a punch at the same time as you, and more than not, he'll land it. And Pereira's kind of like that. When he's in the pocket, he's just trading with you. He's slipping with his hands down and throwing shots while you're throwing shots. They're a little bit more bruisers, right? That Pereira will go in there, he'll trade with you. He doesn't give a fuck. He's looking for that knockout. And then we have Sean O'Malley, who's kind of like the same as Ilia Topuria. O'Malley's more of a sniper. He's looking for that one shot. He has crazy footwork. He's going in and out. I think that was one of the problems he had with Merab, is that he was looking for the knockout shot too much instead of just, using his striking, to accumulate some damage, because he just wasn't finding that knockout shot. Maybe if he, just was throwing consistent strikes and landing damage over time, he could have done better. But that's what makes Sean O'Malley a KO artist, is he's looking for that knockout shot. That's how he wants to win his fights. The next archetype we have is Brawler. And the 2 people I selected for this is Josh Emmett and Michael Chandler. Okay, and the way we all know what a Brawler is. There's not gonna be much explaining with this one. It's just dudes who want to get into a slugfest. They kind of have the similar mindset as the KO artist. The Brawlers are just going in there because they think they'll knock you out before you knock them out. They're just crash outs. They go in there and they slug. They grit down on their mouthpiece and they're just closing their eyes, head down, overhand, overhand. And if they get knocked out, then that's it, or they knock the other opponent out. So these guys have a simple fight style. And a person who fits into Brawler but also fits into KO artist would be Francis Ngannou, right? Because, I mean, as of recent, he's a little more technical, but in the early days, Francis Ngannou would look for the knockout by brawling. He would just throw punches because he knew his power was just so insane that nobody could compete with him or go toe-to-toe with him in a brawling match. Next archetype we have is the point fighter. Okay, this person, and this isn't meant to be like, you know, meant as a bad thing, okay? The people I selected for this is Leon Edwards, Petr Yan, and Israel Adesanya. And you might be thinking, these guys all have KOs, right? Adesanya knocked Alex Pereira the fuck out. He knocked Robert Whittaker out. Leon Edwards knocked Usman out. The difference between these guys is that they're not actively looking for the knockout. The knockout came to Adesanya, right? That was a game plan for him to, you know, play possum and throw the overhand. He was clearly planning that because that happened in the first fight. Leon Edwards, you know, he was setting up that knockout because he had to win by knockout because he was down the other rounds. But if you saw in the beginning of the fight with Usman, he took Usman down. You know, and Petr Yan the same way. He knocked out Uriah Faber. But Yan doesn't look for the knockout. In fact, he's one of the best examples because in the beginning of the fight, he honestly almost throw away rounds. We saw him against Aljamain Sterling. He would just, you know, put his guard up and absorb shots, try to get reads, try to tire the opponent out, and then he, you know, uses his striking to dismantle them. So these guys can get KOs, but they don't actively look for one. They're more just, you know, trying to outclass their opponent. They're trying to land and not get hit. And if they see the KO, then they go for it. So that makes them a little bit more different. Even though these guys have KO power, they can get KOs. Their preferred way to win is just to, you know, stay on the feet and win and just win the fight. They're not looking to force anything. They're just fighting and making reads on whatever they see. Next, we have submission artists. This is basically the same as KO artists, but for grapplers. I think the best person for this is Khamzat Chimaev. I also have Oliveira on this list. They're both under this archetype. Oliveira is a little bit different of an archetype because he strikes a lot. But when it gets to the ground, this guy is looking for the sub everywhere he can get. He's holding onto guillotines. You know, he's extremely dangerous off of his back. And Khamzat Chimaev is very dangerous when he's on your back. Khamzat Chimaev, when he gets to the ground, all he's looking for is the choke. He's not looking there to lay down on you, right? He's not like playing some Bilal Muhammad trying to, you know, tap you with some body shots while he's camping in half guard. He's looking for that choke. We saw against Robert Whittaker. I mean, he didn't even get it under the chin. He was over the chin and just pulled it as hard as he could and ended up getting the submission. So these guys, when they get to the ground, they're looking for the choke. They're not looking for everything to perfectly happen. They're trying to force stuff. They're trying to force chokes to happen. They're actively looking for it, just like how actively Pereira is looking for the knockout and Ilia Topuria is looking for the knockout and Sean O'Malley is looking for the knockout. These guys are looking for the submissions. And the last archetype we have, which is probably one of the best archetypes for the UFC, I think the most success has been this archetype, the Virtuosos. Okay, these are the people that can do everything, right? This was a category. I got this name, this category from UFC 3, I think. It was the person who could do everything. And I have a lot of people in here, a lot of people that are considered the greatest of all time. We have John Jones, Islam Makhachev, Alexander Volkanovski, George St. Pierre, and Mighty Mouse. These guys were well-rounded in everything, right? Islam Makhachev's striking is very good. His wrestling is one of the best in the UFC right now. John Jones, his wrestling's great. His Muay Thai is great. GSP had the insane takedown. He had the insane jab. Mighty Mouse had the crazy jiu-jitsu and the great boxing. These dudes knew everything. They did everything well. They didn't have a weakness in any part of their game. They weren't like Alex Pereira, who had the grappling weakness. They weren't like Merab with the striking weakness. These guys perfected everything. And I think this is the best archetype for the UFC because you don't have any weakness. And some of these guys were specialists, but they developed their other, you know, weakness good enough to where they seemed well-rounded. Islam Makhachev had world-class grappling. He could have been champion just being a grappling specialist, but his striking he developed too, and it's almost as good as his wrestling. John Jones the same way. He started off wrestling, he developed his striking. A lot of these guys started off something very elite, and they just worked and worked and worked on their striking or their wrestling. Volkanovski, wrestler, also played rugby. He developed his striking, and now I think his striking's better than his wrestling. I think Volk is one of the best strikers that we've seen in the UFC, like in terms of mixed martial arts striking, having the boxing, having the, you know, the Muay Thai, the knees, the kicks, everything. I think Virtuoso's, the well-rounded archetype, is the best to have in the UFC. Let me know what you guys think about this archetypes. Which one is the best? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.